On February the 12th of 2025, Barry Moore arrived at a house on Sheep Hill Avenue in Corduff, expecting nothing more than a routine conversation with people he had known most of his life. What he did not realise was that he was walking into a trap, one that would almost cost him his life. Once inside, Moore was brutally beaten, tortured, and branded like an animal. Welcome back to Crime Chronicles. Stay tuned as we look at this horrific event, which marked the beginning of the end for the Hennessy crime gang, a notorious group that had ruled West Dublin through violence, drug trafficking, and intimidation. More than 100 police swarmed several properties in Blanchardstown in a large-scale operation aimed at locating evidence of Moore, whom they believed had been held against his will. Investigators later confirmed that Moore had been subjected to a sustained attack that lasted for hours. Though his injuries were classified as non-life-threatening, they were certainly life-altering, leaving him severely traumatized. Moore had once been a trusted associate of the Hennessy gang, but suspicion had fallen on him following a police seizure of firearms and drugs in Corduff earlier that week. The gang believed Moore had leaked information to authorities, and in their brutal world, betrayal had only one punishment. The Hennessy gang was led by the sons of Jason Hennessy Sr., a well-known crime figure who had been shot dead in a Blanchardstown restaurant on Christmas Eve in 2023. Since their father's murder, the Hennessy brothers had worked relentlessly to maintain their family's fearsome reputation. They relied on drug dealing, violent assaults, and intimidation to solidify their control over West Dublin. On the night of February the 12th, Moore was lured into the house and confronted by Jason Jr., Devon, and Brandon Hennessy. Initially, the conversation seemed routine, but everything changed when Jason Jr. suddenly snatched Moore's phone. Before Moore could react, Jason struck him in the face and demanded he confess to being an informant. Although Moore denied the accusation, the gang had already made up their minds. Kenneth Fitzsimmons, also at the scene, was a close associate of the gang. He retrieved a 5-foot steel bar and swung it at Moore's legs with full force, striking him repeatedly. Brandon Hennessy then took the bar and continued the assault. During the assault, threats to cut off Moore's ear were made, and he was also threatened with rape. But the most chilling part of the attack was yet to come. Jason Jr. produced a branding iron, customized with the word rat engraved into it. He heated the iron using a camping stove, while the others continued their assault on Moore. Moments later, Dean Fitzsimmons, Kenneth's son, entered the room on a Suron electric motorbike, riding straight at Moore and running over his legs. Laughing, he picked up the steel bar and struck Moore again before grabbing an axe and using the blunt end to inflict more injuries. The gang then pressed the red-hot branding iron against Moore's stomach, not once, but 6 times. When Moore insisted he had not set up the gang, Jason branded his face. Brandon suggested further unspeakable acts of violence, but before the situation escalated even further, the gang decided to release Moore, threatening his children in the process. However, before allowing him to leave, they wiped his phone clean of all messages to eliminate any potential evidence. Understandably, after this brutal assault, he was barely able to walk, but his survival instinct took over, and Moore stumbled out of the house and managed to drive to a relative's home, where he collapsed. His family, realizing the severity of his injuries, called emergency services. Moore was rushed to the hospital, where doctors found burns covering 3 to 4% of his body, deep bruising, possible fractures and severe swelling. On February the 13th, Moore gave his full statement to the authorities, detailing the horror he had endured. Armed with this evidence, law enforcement moved swiftly. On the morning of February the 15th, more than 100 police launched simultaneous raids across Corduff and Blanchardstown in a full-scale operation targeting the Hennessy gang. The primary objective was the Hennessy family home, the very site of Moore's torture. Armed officers stormed the property, securing it within minutes. In the backyard, they discovered a garden shed, believed to have been used as an interrogation room. By the end of the operation, all 5 attackers, Jason Jr., Devin, and Brandon Hennessy, along with Kenneth and Dean Fitzsimmons, were taken into custody. Each faced serious charges, including assault causing serious harm, false imprisonment, and the use of weapons in a dispute. These charges carried potential life sentences. Despite overwhelming evidence, the accused remained defiant in court. Dean Fitzsimmons lashed out at officers before apologizing to the judge, while Jason Jr. angrily denied ownership of multiple vehicles linked to the gang. However, Judge Paula Murphy denied bail, ruling that the men posed a serious risk to public safety. All 5 were remanded in custody at Clover Hill Prison. With the gang's leaders incarcerated, the Hennessy crime syndicate lost its grip on Corduff. Their reign of terror, once built on fear and brutality, had come to an abrupt end. The gang's paranoia had led them to attack one of their own, ultimately exposing their violent operations to law enforcement. The Hennessy brothers had attempted to follow in their father's footsteps, but their reckless violence proved to be their downfall. Jason Hennessy Sr. had built a powerful crime network, but his execution on Christmas Eve of 2023 had left a power vacuum his son struggled to fill. Jason Sr. had been gunned down inside Brown's Steakhouse in a chaotic assassination attempt by rival criminal Tristan Sherry. Sherry's plan backfired when Hennessy's associates overpowered and killed him in the restaurant, leaving 2 dead and 6 men later charged with Sherry's murder. After their father's death, the Hennessy brothers became even more aggressive. Devin Hennessy, the eldest, had long been involved in the Corduff gang feuds. In 2024, he survived an assassination attempt when gunmen opened fire on his bulletproof BMW. Jason Jr., the middle brother, had a history of unprovoked attacks, including a brutal hammer assault in 2018. Brandon Hennessy, the youngest, was already deep in the drug trade by age 17, caught with €32,000 worth of cocaine in 2021. Their posturing and brutality intensified following their father's murder. Firebomb attacks were common, and any perceived betrayal was met with extreme violence. But their paranoia proved to be their undoing. When authorities raided a Corduff field and seized drugs and firearms, they turned on one of their own instead of looking outward. Their decision to torture Barry Moore provided the police with all the evidence they needed to dismantle the gang. The Hennessy gang had built its empire on intimidation and ruthlessness, but their fall was swift and inevitable. Their paranoia led them to betray their own, and in doing so, they left behind undeniable proof of their brutality. Thank you for joining us today on Crime Chronicles. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.